Hi Long Range Hunter, welcome to the 20th episode of our terminal ballistic testing, and I have something very special for you. Now, I knocked out a bunch of gel tests, 7 to be exact. So I'm going to be knocking those out as fast as I can as far as the filming and editing and everything that goes into that. But right now I have something really special for you. Now, all the time I have this conversation with people, and it's very hard to translate to them because everybody has read those articles. You read an article that says, oh, well, this is the best cartridge for hunting. You need this in order to kill an elk. Quite frankly, it's all a load of crap. The cartridge is just a vessel that gives you velocity. If you go into a ballistic calculator, it doesn't say anything about the cartridge. All it cares about is the bullet weight, the velocity, the BC. Because that's really all that matters. It doesn't matter if you have the same bullet fired out of a 300 and a 308. It doesn't ask for the cartridge. All it's going to care about is the velocity. Now, this is something people have a hard time grasping. And so I wanted to do an example. Now, I've done this before. The bullet construction is going to dictate not only your external ballistics, but your terminal ballistics. Now, external ballistics is what happens as it travels through the air. That's going to be how it deals with environmental conditions. The less drag, the more aerodynamic, the better. Terminally is what happens inside that animal. Now, that is dictated by, again, bullet construction. How does that bullet perform? How does it open up? How soft or hard is the materials? Jacket thickness, core thickness, So the bullet is what dictates it. So a bad bullet will give you bad performance. People always talk about energy, hydraulic shock, and hydrostatic shock. What they don't understand is that is only a potential. It's directly dependent on bullet performance. I decided to do something interesting with this instead of just going with a Magnum. I decided to go big or go home. So 750 grain emacs out of a 50 BMG. One of the largest shoulder fired cartridges on the market. Now that is a big mama. Now, not to confuse this emacs with the regular emacs. The regular emacs has a very thin jacket and a polymer tip. This has an aluminum tip with a thicker jacket. So it is not constructed the same. So you're not going to get the same type of performance. Let's watch the 51 real quick and then we'll talk about that. All right guys, 50 BMG with the Barrett 750 grain emacs. Got some fun. Going hot. This is a white-tailed deer test. Okey-dokey. Let's go take a look at this. Oh, that'll clear your sinuses. Scramble your brain. Dust everywhere. Slow motion. And here we go. See, it blew straight through. No real dump of energy. Now, what did we see there? One, we saw it blew straight through. Now, this is just like all my other tests. That is a white-tailed deer setup. It's got the correct vital depth for it. It's got real untanned deer hide, and it's got real meat. I do all these tests with and without bones. The reason I do it without is there are hits that you're going to get. You can go through the ribs and not touch ribs on either side. There are shots you're not going to hit bone. So that allows us to see on worst case scenario, how is that bullet going to perform? And then I do it with bones to increase that impact resistance and show the difference. But what we saw here is that bullet penciled through. There was no expansion. It zipped right through. It's a harder bullet, so it's not going to expand as easily, and it just went right through. There wasn't a lot of transition of energy into it, so you're not achieving hydraulic shock despite the velocity. You're only getting hydrostatic shock and not a lot. Now let's go to the next one, which is a 6 Creedmoor. Yes, you heard me. A 6 Creedmoor with 110 grain A-tip. All right, guys, we just did the 50 BMG with the 750 grain emacs. Now we're going to be doing the 6 Creedmoor, the 110 A-tip. We're 20 yards right now. All right, let's go take a look. Guns are clear. I broke a hole in the bucket, sunk in. I did it with both of them. Oh man, it really started opening up right there. Yeah, it broke the bucket. And then it broke the second bucket. That's where it really, ooh, man, it really started. Well, there goes another bucket. That's it right there, it looks like. So you can see right in there, you see that violent opening up. Looks like the bullet actually possibly exited, or is that a piece? No, that's a piece right there. Now we hit this at almost 3,000 feet per second. Very, very high velocity. A lot of transition of energy for such a small cartridge. You can see that's a nice start of a cavity right there. Be interesting to show the footage. Here's the tip. Now, as you can see there, we got a much larger temporary wound cavity, that energy dump. Now, on the permanent wound cavity, something you'll notice is it's very small on the initial part. So going through that gel, and then once it gets in the middle, it really opens up and has a nice cavity that's about the size of my fist. So what's happening is that is a very small diameter bullet going in at a very high velocity. So it's going in, and by the time it starts to open up, it's right in the middle of what would be the chest cavity. So that energy dump would be right on the money where it needed to be. Now, if you impacted bones, it would start that a little bit earlier. But those smaller diameter bullets tend to do stuff like that. But either way, we achieved more transfer of energy, which is going to cause more trauma and better wounding. Now, I'm going to get into numbers in a second, because that's where it really shows the difference. But I thought, why stop at the 6 Creedmoor? Next up is a 223. Yes, you heard me. A 223 with a 69 grain tipped Match King from Sierra. Let's watch that real quick. Now, holy crap, what did you just see? Did you just see a larger energy dump and permanent wound cavity with a 223 than you did a 50 BMG? Yes, you did. Now, originally, I wasn't going to include that one. I was just doing the 2, and that's why I filmed me shooting on the first 2 and not the other one, because I was just doing the gel test on the other one. But it was such a good example, I decided to include it. I recovered the bullet, which you can see here. It's expanded nicely. And I mean, that is the most extreme example I can show to show you. Because honestly, if that was a white-tailed deer, that deer would have more trauma with a 223 than a 50 BMG. It has a larger energy dump. It actually achieved that hydraulic shock. Now, the scale is smaller compared to the TMK and a larger cartridge and bullet, but that's just how it works. You're going to get the same type of wounding. It's just going to grow in scale. So if you're using a 300 Win Mag with a 175 grain TMK, you're going to get the same type of performance, except just on a larger scale. But again, that is perfect proof. And if you believe that this is some kind of fluke, I'm going to put in the description below a link to Jerry Michelick's video. He did a test with this exact same setup. The Barrett, he used the 750 grain emacs from Hornady, and he shot a gel block. Actually, he ended up doing one and then two with the exact same results. And he's got better cameras than I do, so it's even more impressive on that to show how little it transferred. But you have video of not only me shooting two of these together, but then you also have the 223, which I'm going to include that in its own video and cover that. But just for the comparison, I just wanted to show that. But let's get into the numbers real quick. As again, energy is only a potential. So let's start out smallest to largest. So the 223 had an impact velocity of 2,837 feet per second with a potential energy dump of 1,233 foot-pounds of energy. Not bad, right? Now, the 6 Creedmoor had an impact velocity of 2,956 feet per second with a potential energy dump of 2,134 foot-pounds of energy. Now to the big boy. The 50 BMG impacted at 2,800 feet per second with a potential energy dump of 13,000 foot-pounds of energy. Think about that. So on the low end, where it outperformed with the 223, the 223 achieved 1,233 foot-pounds of energy. And we're 37 feet per second difference here. The 50 BMG had 13,000. So we're talking around 11,800 foot-pounds of energy potential difference between the two. I want to make this clear. As the bullet does dictate performance, if this had a different bullet, like an ELD match, if it was actually constructed identically, or even the A-tip and again constructed identically with a thinner jacket, it would perform much differently. So we would go from that bullet just penciling through to that gel block not existing. So with the right bullet, can it outperform all these other ones? Sure. However, you got to have the right bullet in order to do it. Unfortunately, again, most people aren't out there hunting with 50 BMGs. There's no real grand market for it. Now, I hear guys all the time trying to claim stuff. Oh, in combat, they blow guys in half with missing. That's been debunked. I did a video on it. There's been multiple times that's been debunked. Demolition Ranch has done it a couple times, so it doesn't happen. You can't miss and kill somebody with a 50 BMG. And even with it being hit, there's more than enough proof of showing that the 50 BMG can just blow right through if it doesn't meet the necessary impact resistance, just like any other projectile. So again, and Jerry ran it through a longer block. I have mine cut to the exact vital depths of 10 inches. He ran it through one full block and then had another block behind it and did that a second time. So it's not some kind of fluke. It just doesn't meet the impact resistance it needs. Now, if you used it on an animal like that had high impact resistance and a lot of depth of penetration required, it would work very well. But this just goes to show you that quit focusing on the cartridge. It's irrelevant. Honestly, with these bullet selections, I would be more efficient taking the 6 Creedmoor or the 223 to a deer, and I would get better results. So quit focusing on what cartridge you have and how big it is. You don't need a Magnum. A lot of people don't realize the most common moose round in the world is a 6.5 by 55 Swede. It is. People use them all the time. It's just people going out there. They're not from, out west or in places where people hunt moose or elk or any of that. And they hear guides talk about it. Well, again, the guide does that to prevent wounded animals. It has nothing to do with its performance. And even that doesn't make sense because, again, they're basing it off the cartridge. If they bring a 300 with a bad bullet, it's not going to give them better performance. If they run a small cartridge, short action, 308, 6 Creedmoor, 6.5, and they use the correct bullet, they're going to get superior performance, and they're not even having as much recoil. So you don't need magnums. You don't need giant cartridges to kill. Just get a good cartridge that you can handle and pick the right bullet. There's plenty of them out there that will give you optimal performance, and you don't need to burn your barrel out or have to, shoot some really high recoiling, expensive cartridge to shoot. You can do it and get the results you need with something much smaller. So again, this, whether you want to argue or not, is physical proof. You saw the 50 BMG. It did not even go off of the bucket. There was no real transition of energy. There was nothing. The TMK broke the bucket. The 223 actually broke the bucket from energy transfer. And we ended up switching buckets because several of them did get broken. So it's not like, oh, the 50 weakened it and that. Those were two completely different buckets. So even the 6 Creedmoor broke the bucket. The 50 didn't. It didn't move it. It didn't send it flying. It did not perform like most people think. People have these illusions about the cartridge and the bullet size. Well, unless it performs, it doesn't do you any good. So I hope everybody's enjoyed this. I have a lot more. I've got the Sierra Match Kings that I've drilled in order to show what that does. I've got, again, the TMKs. I've got Burger VLDs coming up. I do have another one with the A-tips that I'm going to be showing. So we knocked out a lot. I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting one, but it's been a long day, and I'm filming here in the middle of the night just because I got to do that. But everybody, I hope this has been educational. I hope it's helped you. If you have questions, comments below. And everybody be safe out there. Happy hunting. Not that hard, people.
Hope you enjoyed this video, and make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notification bell so you won't miss out on any future video, and happy hunting.